Yeah, then welcome to this session. Very looking forward. My name is Caroline Szymanski. I have been in the world of design thinking for almost 15 years, I think 12. But I also have a background in neuroscience, so I'm especially interested in this panel. And yeah, let me first introduce Claudia Nicolai. I think I don't have to say so much because I think everybody has seen Claudia by now. And then let me introduce you, the panelists. Now, I don't want to say anything wrong. We have Professor Bert Arnrich, who is the chair of the chair here for digital health, connected healthcare at the Hasso Plattner Institute. And what they're trying is a little bit a paradigm shift in healthcare, I would say, kind of from treating diseases to using connected health to preventing them and to promoting like a well-being lifestyle. And then we have Bettina and Michl from Data for Life, who has also been one of the first D-School cohorts. That's how long she's been in the field, and she's done consulting work and other work, and now, she's the user research lead at Data for Life. And then we have Ariane Morassi-Sasso, with the nicest name in the panel. And she's also a researcher at the Share for Connected Health, working with, I think, big data and hypertension, if I'm correct, more or less. And yeah, very interested in hearing. And then Dr. Klaus Suwelack from Innovation Management and New Business Development and Janssen & Johnson, who also has done stuff with neuroscience and health. So I'm very interested in that part, but who's now kind of, I don't know if pioneering, but very big in the field of in a connected, like digital health and psychiatry, and kind of how we can use digital services to enhance psychiatry treatments. And yeah, looking forward to the panel.
Yeah, me as well, because I really have the honor to be moderating today. And I think with this specific topic of digital health, with also having kicked off this DT ImpAct event, I think we now start really diving into something really meaningful, and also, I hope, a topic for discussion. Because if we do look at the topic design thinking and digital health, by maybe overusing a bit of stereotypes, design thinking stands for human-centeredness that can be translated into maybe patient-centeredness as one part. And then on the other hand, digital health, with offering lots of opportunities from my side on like the technology in terms of the tech potential. And that's something where, I would like to learn a bit from you, how you address that as an overall topic, like looking at the persons for whom we try to design for, in terms of trying to also better understand in terms of from a research perspective, and then I also want to try to find application in that tech-driven field. So therefore, I'm really looking forward also to have this variety of perspectives from research, from applications, and also really from business to see how we can also use that later on to make an organizational transformation within an existing structure. So therefore, I think there are lots of things we can discuss, and for me, it's also a field that became more and more important when we started to also dive into those, not like where there is a need from somebody, but there is a tech opportunity. So how can we actually create then innovations in that sphere? So how to find actually a balance between both. And just also to share a bit of stories, because it's also looking back the past and present and future. So when I started to dive into that field, we had the great opportunity to collaborate with the Charité in order to establish an interdisciplinary research center. For the first workshop, we brought together professors, clinical scientists, but also practitioners like working in the various fields of regenerative therapies. And we did also a workshop co-design with all of them. But then after the intro and the first activity, somebody raised their hand and asked, like, Frau Nicolai, so it was in German, so I'm going to do this in English now. For how long are we going to continue doing this that way? Because I'm actually working in the emergency care, and within the last 2 hours, I would have saved 24 patients. Yeah, that was a bit of a cultural clash. So we also learned that when it comes to these application fields, there has to be something else, something different, and picking out specific elements. And that's also something we also, for example, figured out when in the near past, we started to look at like how we can bring artificial intelligence and into the rescue operations. So therefore, more or less trying to build these type of networks. By the way, this professor got convinced that this is a good approach. They developed the application for the excellence cluster together and got their funding. So therefore, at the end, it was also super successful for them. And now they have biothinking that they still practice there. But coming now back to you here on the panel, and I'd like to start a bit from research to application. We thought it might be nice that all of you can share a bit like your personal or maybe also your professional perspective about this topic in terms of its combination of design thinking, human-centeredness, tech potential. And I'd like to start with you. Maybe, Bert, you can share with us like a few insights into what you do specifically when it comes to trying to bring this patient-centered perspective into connected, personalized health. And then we'll go on with like 3 statements, and then we're gonna go into a Q&A where we also wanna hear and learn from you if there's any question from the audience inside that room, and also hopefully inside the virtual space. Yeah, so that's something we'll still have to figure out.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot for the nice introduction. So my voice is not the best today, so I'm trying to, focus what I'm saying to not lose too many words. So let me start maybe with the name of the chair, Connected Healthcare. So the idea here is to connect health relevant data in daily life with clinical data. And why are we doing that? Well, because medical professionals tell us they do not know their patients well enough, right? Because they see them only twice a year, and they usually see them when they have a health problem, and so they don't know what's the healthy baseline, and they also don't know how they respond to treatment. And these days there are many technical gadgets that we can use or further develop to gather health relevant data in daily life. Some simple examples we all know are, the step counters that we have in our phones or in our smartwatches, and there are many, many more. And why we need user-centered design? We are mostly technical people, and we come up with many ideas, how to improve the situation, how to help patients, how to help medical doctors. And some of our ideas work out and some not. And from those that do not work out, some of them simply do not work out because, the patients did not accept it, or it was not in line with the, a clinical process that simply did not work at the end. And I think it's not the right way, to learn that after you have developed something, right? When you evaluate it and then realize, okay, this is working and this is not working. It would be much better if we start at the beginning of the development process to bring medical professionals, patients, IT, technical people on the table, guided by design thinking coaches, and learn what is working at the end and what not, right? And I have seen a few examples, successful examples for that, not only here at HPI. So a short time I was also in industry with Accenture, and we also did design thinking workshops. I think the Accenture coaches learned here how to do that. And so I had kind of a very nice example with pharma companies where, the pharma company, patients and medical doctors were on one table, and we were discussing, how a solution could look like in the future in a user-centered way. And so that we design at the end, or that we develop at the end, something that's really used and something that really has an impact, right? And here I see that the main point, that if you want to have something at the end that has an impact, we have to do it user-centered, and design thinking is a great way to do that.
Thank you. Maybe Ariane, as you are working at the same institution, being the Digital Health Center here at the HPI, I would be interested, how would you frame that? Because you also have a bit of a different research field, but also, what do you see in terms of on that level from user patient-centered to tech. Maybe we can even enhance that or enlarge that with like looking at humanity and tech. So where do you maybe see the tensions in your work, or where have you seen it working out?
Yes.
They were going to switch it on once you start talking, so we're good.
Very modern. Yes, so I'm also at the Digital Health Center at HPI, at the Personalized Medicine Chair, but I also do work with Bert. I'm actually in all the chairs. There are a few because I've been.
And honestly, I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't think the mic is working. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. No, it's okay. Is it working? Right. Should I just analyze mine now? Maybe it's my position.
The blooper.
Yes.
Otherwise, you can try mine. It would as well.
It works.
Does it work?
The silver ones for the discussion.
Yeah, we just tried this one because this
Okay.
Okay.
So that was your initial mic that Thomas now has in his left hand. You can give that back to Bert, and now we're.
It works.
Okay, it works now.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, as I was saying, I'm actually the personalized medicine chair. And yeah, in the beginning, when I joined here, I was much like focused on research, like of course, looking at my data, what the data can do, and then, I mean, this is all really nice and really cool for me, of course. But when you talk to the doctors, you realize they, of course, want to know the clinical endpoint, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what is this for? I mean, even if your research is not going to get there now, they want you to have a vision, right, of the future. Where is this going? How this is going to actually impact patient lives? Like the doctor at the DR mentioned it, because that's all they care about. So this makes you do research with a different perspective. I'm not just analyzing data. This is actually like people, patients, you know, so you have to take also their opinion into account. And then since I started at HPI, I had, when I was in my bachelor, some disciplines around, at the time they called human-computer interaction. And I came here and I learned about design thinking. To be honest, I was very skeptical. I was like, how can this help research? What is that? But then I took a course at the Global Design Thinking Week, and I'm a converted. I went to this course and I was like, wow, this is so incredible how fast you can learn about a problem, actually be in contact with the people who actually have the problem. And sometimes in research we are a bit far away from that. So I think this was the biggest learning for me with design thinking, that you should always involve the people involved in your problem. It can be the healthcare professionals, can be the patients, even if your research has a very far away goal. I mean, I'm working with estimating blood pressure, for example. It's not that far away, but I'm looking at just data from wearables all day. But I have to know who are the people who actually have this problem, or who are the doctors who want to check this data and want to improve patient care. So this actually made a big change, and that's how I try now. Every time I'm working, I'm like, okay, so what am I doing this for? What's the actual objective I want to achieve in like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years?
Yeah, thank you for that. Also for kind of framing it, so it could be either like bring the future patient already into the project at the beginning, if that makes sense, because you're already very close with the research in terms of being applied to, but also, as you said, with more like groundbreaking or like research to have that vision. So why I'm doing that. So, and this is more like on the purpose level. But you also mentioned in between big data and like collecting in order to be able to develop personalized treatments, you need that. And I think Data for Life with Bettina and Michl standing here, it would be also interesting to hear from your perspective, because with your activities, you really try to tap into that in terms of enabler, right? So how can we gather data in order to be able to provide it to researchers and people who are developing future applications specifically in digital health in order to do so. So therefore it would be nice to also hear what your perspective on that field is.
Yes, I may take the chance to just show some slides because it's a bit technical, and I'm also thanks.
This is more specifically also for the virtual audience, so it might not be needed in that room, but really to get that out there.
Yeah, good point. Because I think from the round here, I work in the organization that is most tech-driven, where we digitalize health research to advance public health and personalized medicine. And we're independent and non-profit. We are certified by a German federal office. and we have like 100 experts working on it. And what we want to do is our vision is to have a world where health data is comprehensively, digitally, and securely available for research, and directly impacts the prevention, as you mentioned, the diagnosis and treatment of diseases. And it's a huge vision, and I have to say we do struggle to really bring that into life. We now have the mission to digitalize health research to advance public health and personalized medicine. And how we do that is that we have two focus areas where we optimize the digital collection of epidemiological data and provide scientists with real-time access to standardized data sets. And there are several projects that we run. One is with the RKI, where we help develop a metadata search engine in order for the institution to understand what kind of data sets they have, or where they are, in order then to access them and share it internally only, because those institutions, they gather a lot of data, a lot of important health data, and really I wouldn't say they lose track, but it's hard to tap into that knowledge from outside or even from within the organization. And so, and for personalized medicine, the other focus area is that we, together with renowned hospitals, enable the development of central data platforms for AI research with clinical data. I also am very happy about the slides because I said it's very technical. And yes, thank you. And there's also a bit the challenge to bring in the human-centeredness. But we do that by, for each project, really integrating user research in the beginning, during discovery, trying to talk to researchers, or not trying, but actually planning for and doing, do talk to researchers, talking to patients, stakeholders, and also then during development. I think that's normal for tech development now, but we do a lot of usability testing afterwards in order to make sure we're on the right track. I think now I talked a lot. Maybe I hand over to Klaus.
Exactly, so that we're also going to, not that you talk too much, but also to get actually your perspective, like as an organization, as being a pharmaceutical company, and also being responsible for digital health. And then we can connect those dots, because I think it's kind of a good example also to showcase and to discuss about like how to innovate in that network of actors, specifically if it comes that it ties down to maybe even shared databases and access to data about people.
Yeah, a few minutes ago we realized that they've been working on a program where we learned design thinking and making use of this type of approaches. And yes, I started at Janssen as a pharmaceutical company, and nowadays I would say it's more or less a healthcare company, because it's going way beyond the pharmaceutical products. We are offering a lot of services and solutions around our products, and that's very important, I would say. But let me start with a quote from our founder, Dr. Paul Janssen. He always said, it's 5 to 12, the patients are waiting. So that was a quote he used when he went through the lab spaces and talked to the innovators there. And it may show that we are very much into the user of our products, the patients, and that's true today as well. So we are making use of partnerships with patient research organizations and patient self-help groups, even to set up our studies, so to include patients' views and make use of their competency that they are owning based on their own illness that they are suffering from. The second point is innovation. We are in a lot of indications working with orphan and ultra-orphan diseases. Ebola, for example, is one where we will definitely never will get earn much money, but we just want to understand how these illnesses can be cured and what we can do for this. And the third point is that we realized that most of the innovation is taking place outside of our company. So we are often working together with other companies that are experts, especially in the field of digital and digital health, because in the last 10 years, there's enormous growth outside in terms of solutions, availability of solutions. When we started with digital health, we had to develop everything on our own from scratch. But nowadays, there is a lot of potential for setting up partnerships, and that's something we do. In terms of digital, I would say that we are pretty much digitalized as a company. Our whole value chain from research for products to marketing and sales, that's all digital nowadays. And digital health especially is for us an enabler, an enabler to make healthcare system better, faster, more efficient, and definitely more patient-centric. So that's what we do, and therefore we are definitely working on solutions around our products and beyond our products, because we think that if there comes a digital solution in an indication where we don't have a pharmaceutical product, this might be an interesting business as well, because there are already solutions out there that can cure a disease or even prevent it if you make use of this solution. And I myself realized that when I bought this little watch here, I tried it out and found out that there was something wrong with my ECG. And visited a doctor, and he said, "Okay, yes, we have to do something." So, and it was before I was ill or even diagnosed, and that's something I think that's striking. So, digital solutions can kick in even before somebody gets diagnosed for a certain illness, and that's something you have to use. And the data you have to make use of, otherwise you're missing something for the patient.
Yeah, thanks also for sharing that perspective, and also the ones that you also brought to this table. I think there's one element or question that I'd like to, as first point of the discussion, want to try to maybe better understand, or maybe try to dig a bit deeper into, is like, you said, I mean, we can make a checkbox in terms of, yes, patient-centered, it's good, it's needed, specifically when it comes, and that might be something to discuss later, to be able to earlier diagnose, for example, also rare diseases, like where also these type of things might come into play. But what I'd like to dive deeper into is, like you all mentioned, you work with others, right? So therefore, the question for me is like, what does this stand for? Because we are like coming from design thinking. We started to talk firstly of like how to bring people together with like different disciplinary backgrounds that actually applies in research, I would say, quite nicely. But it's also bringing together an innovation network, because you need partners. Let it be data for life, so like people providing data in order to be able to develop new models, etc., for personalized medicine. So my question would be on either or. So how do you build this multiple perspective into what you're doing, either as a researcher or a practitioner or applied data scientist, and into your network? It's actually like two questions, so maybe we can start with the first one. So how do you bring this like multiple perspectives into your work?
Yeah, maybe I can take the example you ended with, right? So the watch detects something in your ECG, sorry, and you go to the medical doctor, cardiologist, and for further diagnosis, right? So when you take this example, we clearly understand that there has to be an interdisciplinary cooperation, right? Because the watch is a technical piece, right? And the algorithms behind that are able to detect something might be wrong is a clear, we could call it artificial intelligence or data mining or data analytics, whatever, right? So a technical part that analyzes it, and then it has to be transferred to a medical doctor, right? And I think that example is a really good one because it shows us also that, you know, in the near future, everyone will put pressure on the health systems to change something, because you are not the only one that, you know, goes to a doctor with that message from your watch. There are many, and the problem is that nowadays we are totally unprepared for it. We always talk about, I mean, digital health in the sense of having, you know, making your hospital data, you know, digital available. But we are totally unprepared for patients who are coming to their doctors and say, my home device tells me something about this and that. And it would be needed that the medical doctor can import the data from your watch, can use it for diagnosis, and later use it for monitor the treatment. But that's not possible. That's simply not possible. And so we have a very long way to go. And the planning with all those digital health card, you know, they are much too short, right? So we have to target much bigger challenges than the ones we have in our mind.
May I step in? I think, yes, we're not prepared that the doctors, what you said. We did experiment with a certain solution with long COVID, where people gathered data on their symptoms. And what we experienced, and that's also a bit of a sad story, the doctors were not prepared to look at it because they're not incentivized. So I think one of the big challenges in digital health is you need a systemic approach. Many of the stakeholders, and especially the doctors, their incentive is not to improve the wellness and to improve the prevention of a disease, but they are really paid for diagnosing, and they have very short time frames. And so even when there are great solutions and the patients are open and bring them to the doctors, they might not be able to use it, or they might not be incentivized. So you really have to look even into the bigger picture and find partners from health insurances, government, regulation plays a big role. So, and that's also something that I think we underestimate sometimes when we come from more the startup culture and digital, like that healthcare is really a complex system. There's so many players, there's a lot of legacy, and it's really hard to have those kind of collaboration or partnerships that you mentioned that we need.
Yeah. Exactly, and I think also, as you said, like if you look at this as an innovation funnel or also then a systems of actors, kind of on both ends, like at the very beginning. So that would mean like in order to be able that this data can be used by a cardiologist, means that the company designing those tech devices has to do this in a specific way, where actually then data also becomes accessible, has standards. And then along the line, if you say what you're making as a point is like whenever you have put this in place in terms of new systemic design thinking or new systemic design, there's still going to be barriers, hurdles to be overcome, because then when it comes to the implementation, then there might be a few more than this one that actually can already do something with it today. So say, okay, I can look at that. I created my own, I don't know, hack around to get access to the data. But then also, as you said, like convince people to come up with new routines, specifically if you have been working in the healthcare sector now as a practitioner, you were referring to, for quite a long time. So there again, this like then perspective in terms of how to prevent that or how to minimize those barriers, I think is another like important and big challenge for being innovative in that field.
Yes, what
Yes, I'm just gonna let Klaus finish, and then gonna.
No, I just wanted to emphasize this on this because I think that digital health or digital literacy for doctors and patients, that's absolutely necessary. Then nowadays there is a growing group of patients that are young and digital native. That's not the problem, but they are facing doctors that are getting older and older, and then they have to be trained, I would say, to make sure that they can make use of this type of solutions, and definitely they have to be incentivized in a way because nothing comes gratis, I would say. You have if there's something that you want from the doctor, you have to pay for it. That's our system, I would say.
Maybe just a short reply to that. So, I mean, I think these days, so if I compare it 20 years ago, so the doctors are aware of it. So I remember 20 years ago, I had to convince many doctors that doing something with data is meaningful. This totally changed. So medical doctors now come to us with their data and say, let's do something together because we see the value in the data, right? So this has totally changed. And so that's why these days, right, we have the data, we have the technology, so we have to do it, right? And there are many challenges to be solved, no questions, but it's the right time to do it.
Okay, my question is to Bettina. So did you do the test only in Germany? And I wonder how the systems, how they differ in the world. Because in German language, the Krankenhaus, the hospital, is meant a house for ill people. And in China, we heard it's the house for, or doctors get paid that the patients are healthy. Yeah. So maybe if the motivation changes, I wonder if the incentive, what you mentioned, makes a difference. So
yeah, that's of course a very good point. There is a strong culture in Germany that influences our healthcare system, and no, we did not test it in other cultures yet. So we basically worked. Our research solutions are focused on the German healthcare system because it's also very national. Healthcare systems are very national or even regional. That's another issue. But yes, you are pointing to a great aspect. We really need a culture shift in approaching disease more as a wellness, keeping people well and healthy for a long time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. There's also something that comes into play. Design thinking here stands for me also like how to further innovate in that field, no matter if what part of the system you represent in terms of an actor's perspective. And once you start innovating, you have to be aware of like what's the local context you're actually in. But the point you're making, I think it's extremely great because it also ties back again to why is design thinking and digital health in there, because we're also seeking out for inspirations and sometimes like looking at in other cultures and then just the reframe, right, the shift in terms of it's not like I'm ill or I'm not being well. It's like a completely different meaning also in terms of like the mind shift exactly. And therefore, if I can rephrase the question also, feel free, anybody who would like to answer. How would you describe, because you said the time is right now, but what would be the mind shift in terms of putting that into what's needed? If the opportunities are there, so what would you say, like how would we have to frame and label what we're needing in that field?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, right? I mean, we should think about a kind of paradigm shift. And we should think about how we can empower people, right? People that have a smartwatch and or other digital tools, and that would like to do something for the health, right? And will put pressure on the health system so that there has to be a change so that we can, for example, use all this valuable data in daily life to do the better diagnosis and to be able to monitor treatment much better than we can do. And of course, in the hospital, of course, they also have, there is a lot of challenges that are open when we talk about patient data, right? And when we look at the reality, you know, how patient data is managed and how complicated it is to get a full picture of the patient, right? Because every department in the hospital has sometimes a different hospital information system, so bringing this data together is a nightmare, right? And I mean, we need to do it better, right? And so there are so many challenges ahead of us, and I mean, also naming a few, you know, user acceptance, right? I mean, whenever we talk about health data, people, you know, are afraid what happened to my data, right? And so data security is, of course, also an important issue. And of course, we have to convince people that the solutions we are working on are, you know, helping at the end, and that we are aware of the risks. To just name a few of those.
Would you like to build on that?
Yeah, I think especially
Mm-hmm.
we do have a group that is working in the field of disease interception.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something where people are not yet ill, but they might be affected of a specific illness, and there are data or even digital situations where you can see somebody is moving into the direction of illness. But nowadays it's difficult, absolutely difficult, because there's no remuneration for this type of working with a patient. To make sure that somebody doesn't get ill, there's no remuneration for it, and therefore there has to be some political work around as well to make sure that staying patients healthy, or even working on a specific condition that might come up but can be intercepted at a specific level, that this is paid for from the system, because it's much cheaper to save somebody's life early on than later on taking all the costs of a disease that's in full fruition then and has to be paid for a lot.
Thank you. I think there's another question from the audience in here, and we're also going to have one or two from the online people. So,
I was wondering, because we talk a lot about the constraints. You mentioned already a lot of hurdles. I still see a lot of potential in there. And I was wondering, when you look at the business model of pharma and the business model of hospitals, what in your opinion is the biggest lever we have to really change something about this big paradigm shift you're talking about? What are the things you can actually do? Because systemic approach often sounds like it's never going to happen. But what is the biggest lever we have?
I think so too, and it can be also extended. I mean, it's not the either-or choice between pharmaceutical and hospitals. It's really about like trying to like be maybe not specific, but maybe more critical point. It's not finger pointing, right? But it's more like what's actually the entry point in terms of, because like if it's about systemic change, then also, I mean, with design thinking and this user-centered perspective in terms of patients we'd like to do, but where is actually, as you said, like the trigger moment, the leverage factor within that system where change has to happen, as you said, everything is in place now, because this will make an impact. And I think maybe Ariane, if you'd like to give it a start.
Yes, I mean, I want to be a little optimistic. Give a good example from public health, especially around the smoking. So smoking is still a big thing, but especially around the 80s. I mean, I'm from Brazil, and Brazil was the leading country in fighting smoking. The country realized, I mean, after all the scandals and all the proofs that, okay, actually smoking causes lung cancer is bad. We are a country that don't have that many resources. We cannot treat all these people with lung cancer. So the country decided to make a very heavy public policy against smoking. So if you check the numbers, which were before the 80s and now, it changed so much. I mean, at the time, they probably thought it was not possible, but they invested, they informed people. So they informed people about why is it bad, to smoke? How can we prevent it? If you smoke, how can you stop? So there was a lot of investment from the public sector around it, and it worked. So it's possible. It's not something not impossible, but it needs different actors. It needs a lot of, I think, especially maybe not just a private sector, but the private and the public together trying to fight something that's really serious.
And there are a lot of other diseases where this type of behavioral change can have a lot of impact. And coming back to this question, I would say I'm a fan of value-based healthcare, where the one who's taking care is paid for the outcome. And if we change the system into this direction, this would help a lot, I would say, because it's a completely shift of, because nowadays doctors, pharmaceutical companies, everybody is paid for time invested in somebody who is already ill, and time invested to make sure that this is repaired in a way, but not based on the outcome. Yeah, and that's something I would say would help us a lot if this mind shift could be done. But this will take some time because the healthcare system is very difficult and balanced, a lot of different pressure groups, and I think, but this would change a lot of the system. Yeah.
Maybe I would build on your comment and also on what Bert said earlier. What you can do as an individual is actually approach your doctors and with new solutions and kind of call for a change and call them and ask them to really invest the time because they are open. We also that maybe sounded a bit too critical, but we did see also good examples where people would take the things they documented to their physiotherapist, and they were really, really happy that people, I don't know, had documented their long COVID process, and so they could really adapt their therapy much more quickly compared to when they would have just had to ask them in a very tedious process. So it's really about enabling patients and people beforehand, as you mentioned, but also, and I think we do underestimate it, change also happens because there is pressure from above, or there is like some enablement from above. So the regulation in the healthcare system is really a factor that really needs to change. There are also good. It's also changing. We have a new government. There's a lot of things going on, but still, from an industry side, I do see there is still a lot needed when we speak about guidance. For example, you mentioned data security. Data security laws in Germany are very, very important. They're for us, it creates a lot of times a barrier because we can't really, it's a very complex thing. They're very concrete. On the other side, there's sometimes, people are a bit left alone. Actors are left alone. So I do hope that there is more political pressure or a change there.
So one thing in addition, what you mentioned when think about design thinking and digital health. So one challenge we have is that. 80% or something of the population does not, let them help with technology. Right? So, let's say the couch potatoes, for example, right? They don't care about, the numbers of steps every day, right? And even this kind of nice awards you can win on your app or on your smartwatch, many don't care. Right? So the question is, how we motivate people that, would benefit most from this technology if they would change their lifestyle to a more healthy lifestyle. So obviously this kind of awards and gamification and stuff does not work for everyone, right? And so we have this is a concrete challenge that we might solve with design thinking. So, and then we would also, I mean, we have to make sure that we also invite the right people, right? If we just invite the people that are interested in digital health and all those gadgets, we don't get the, you know, full set of answers. So we might then, again, design, implement, develop something that is working for those 20% who have their health in mind and you are eager to use that smartwatches, but the rest not, right? Yeah. So we have to make sure that, you know, we get those people on the table in this design thinking process to understand what are their needs, what they wish to really have something at the end, you know, that changes lifestyle, healthy lifestyle for the majority of people. I think that's for future projects very important.
Come to that in a second. Also, I'd like to, I mean, we're not at the end of the panel because we also have a question from the online. I think that's also for me kind of showcasing now how also with, like, not with design thinking as being the vehicle, but also how it has been advanced. So it's not just about user-centered, people-centered. It now has that connotation about like how to enable people, how to empower them. Let it be in terms of owning or sharing their personal health data with others, but also in terms of trying to empower them to better understand like how these solutions will be helping. And you also brought in the term value-based, right? So for me also it's no longer about like, okay, now we have a new way of incentivizing people. It's really at looking at the whole system, so it's not just about the innovation per se. There is a better digitized service or a personalized approach, but there is that value added to the whole system. So it's lesser people getting sick from the beginnings, or it's people getting treated earlier than being
with a better outcome.
With a better outcome, exactly, so that the treatment is better. And that for me, like if we also like frame that from design thinking past, present, future, showcases that it's no longer about just like ask a few patients and then design something around it. So have that systemic approach and work with them. Plus also what you brought in, and we haven't talked about this a lot, but it can also be something where the digital divide comes into play. People might be left behind, but that might be a question. I don't know if it's from the audience or something else from the online audience. So Carol, maybe you can like share it with us in here.
We have several, and we have only 2 minutes left, and we have one from the audience here. Let's start with one, so maybe you can always just one of you give an answer. One was related to what you also, Bettina, said before, that you know data security is often also a problem for you, and the question was asking, nowadays is it maybe less human-centeredness, but more really data analytics that is not really being done on a major scale to help like medical work on the ground, for example, breast cancer diagnosis? And what are the biggest obstacles? Like, you know, is it something like data protection, or is it one stakeholder in particular? What would you say? Was a question open to all of you?
Yeah, I don't know, Bert, do you guys have any immediate reaction?
This was a pretty long question, so if you had a short summary of it.
I think it's both actually. It's yes, the people are a bit hesitant to share their data or to gather the data and share it. But then there is also, and then there was another aspect.
Like what obstacle or what stakeholders, like the biggest problem, especially if like kind of that you use data analysis that is in healthcare more widely used, especially when it comes to kind of several institutions, that several institutions share data and their analyses.
It's because, the data doesn't get out of the hospital, like they protect their data. The people, or in my experience, it's really hard. Stakeholders who gather data,
maybe from a technical point, a short answer. So what we are currently developing are methods where the data stays where it is collected. So, and that the artificial intelligence, right, so the neural network goes where the data is located and learns from that data, and then the network is sent back to us and then is sent to some other place. So these kind of methods we're currently developing that, you know, exactly target that issue, that a central data collection is always something, you know, which has data security risks, right? But if we have technologies that, you know, can work with the data where it was collected, and we no longer need to exchange data between, you know, different hospitals in order to build up some powerful AI methods that, you know, can support diagnosis, for example. So these are some issues, some challenges that we have in our research here at HPI, actually.
Thank you. I think there's another question, so if we can take that, and maybe then.
Yeah, thanks very much. I just want to come back to the point you have to convince the patient about sharing the data. 2 examples from my personal life, living in London, UK. I'm extending my visa and using an app on my iPhone and scanning my passport chip. I don't have to go to anybody, but it's full transparent, my data. If I change my flat in London, I have to do a completely holistic background check for my financial situations. So I think the topic of sharing data isn't the boundary anymore. So I don't fully understand the boundaries, why there is no breakthrough in digital health. I mean, for me as a customer with the whole fitness wave and whatsoever, at least I would love to share all my data, because I'm sharing it anyway with any kind of app I have on my phone for bullshit, but not for my health. So if this could prevent me from getting sick or give me a better life or whatever, I don't think that the customer or the patient is the blocker. Plus the whole insurance network, which can't afford anyway the future if we continue like this. There must be so much pressure on the system from both sides, like the patient itself plus the insurance system. So what is the blocker why we don't have this breakthrough in digital health?
Can I share
Yes,
something?
please.
Yes.
Just from a research perspective, I mean, as a person, I like the idea of sharing my data, but I also like the idea of privacy. But as a researcher, many times I would like to share my data with other researchers, but I'm always thankfully bound by ethics agreements and everything. And in the end, we are liable, you know, like we are as people are liable. So we have to be careful. It's not something, I mean, of course, I would like everybody to have my data. I would like to work with other people, but I would say we are all liable. I'm liable. The healthcare professionals who collected the data are liable. The hospital is liable, and this people can be sued. Right? So this is one also aspect that usually puts a lot of pressure in individual actors, not just on the general government, I would say. So I would say this is one barrier, for example, for sharing data. So it's not sometimes that the actors don't want to, but it's hard. We have to come up with better, maybe technological or other political solutions so people can safely share data and also feel safe, you know, about doing that, at the same time protecting patients, people's privacy.
And definitely people want to share their data, especially those who are affected from a specific disease like cancer or so. They want to share everything to prevent people later on from getting this disease by donating their data. And specifically, another problem is that politicians and data security officers in Germany, they think that they have to make sure that patients do not share their data. So that's something everybody wants to share data, definitely, but the politicians say, okay, you are not allowed to. And that's a big problem in Germany, because that's just an old school thinking, I would say, that patients have to be saved from data sharing if they want to.
Unfortunately, we have to cut really the discussion here, because only of the time we have 5 minutes left in order to make the transition, but I don't want to leave you with also having had the last word, final statement. So therefore, instead of having a long one, I just want to hear from you what's going to be your next project you're going to work on in this field. So to see like if, what's going to happen.
Yeah, many projects, so I'm not prepared for that question. So I mean, definitely it will be an interdisciplinary project, because we are always working together with medical professionals. Might be pharma, might be you know, clinics, might be mental health specialists, but whatever. So we always do interdisciplinary projects. We do have a project where we are working on ECG data, and
early detection of specific diseases, and that's an interesting field. I'm not an expert, but I know that it has a lot of impact.
What about you two?
Maybe just an ongoing project. So I'm actually working with somebody from the Human-Centered Design Chair, Daniele, who's here. And we are presenting our work with digital health and human-centered design at a design thinking conference in South Africa on 15th of October. Is that right?
Maybe a day earlier, because other than that it would be over. So
yes, sorry, 14th of October. So yeah, if you're curious about how to use also digital health and human-centered design, we have a very cool project where we analyze comments from users that use diverse mobile health apps for hypertension and what are their needs. So what we found out.
Thank you.
And well, I did come from consulting with what is a lot of project-based. Now I work in a company, and it's hard to say what the next project is, not only because the strategy is sometimes changing, but also because I'm engaging in a long product development process. And so what my next milestone maybe, so to say, is to see the pilot go live and have actual usability tests with researchers on how they like the solution, how they will engage with it.
Thanks a lot to you all. Also, thanks a lot for sharing that, because I also feel like, okay, this is not one solution or one Gordic knot that can be broken with just one activity. It needs more active actors. It needs also lots of more projects in terms of be broken down for specific diagnosis, applications, patient interaction. And I think this is what we'd like to leave you with, that it's a network problem, but there's going to be network solutions. And I'd like to thank you. And hope that you're going to have a bit of a rest in between now and then, meaning the next session. Yeah, so give them please a big round of applause.